If you're a manager, you know this feeling, right? Your success, your entire job, depends on getting great results through other people. But man, is it tempting to just jump in and do it yourself? Here's the thing though, that temptation, it is a one-way ticket to burnout. So in this explainer, we're going to break down how to stop doing everything yourself and actually truly hold your team accountable.
This right here, this feeling, is at the absolute heart of so many frustrations for leaders. You go out, you hire smart, capable people, you give them the work, but it still feels like you're the only one who's really, truly invested in the outcome. You end up feeling less like a leader and more like a project manager, just constantly chasing people for updates to drag things over the finish line.
And this leads to what you could call the vicious spiral. And you know, it always starts with the best intentions. You jump in to help out. You take on a little more work just to make sure it gets done right. But pretty soon, you're stressed out and resentful. Your team sees this, right? They feel like you don't trust them, so they get demotivated, which of course makes you delegate even less. It's this downward spiral that honestly just ends up hurting everyone.
But there is a way out of this trap. We're going to start by totally redefining what accountability even means. Then, I'll introduce you to a really cool framework called the accountability dial. We'll talk about mastering the actual conversations, how to set clear consequences, and finally, how this whole thing really starts with you.
Okay, first things first. Let's tackle the word itself. I mean, accountability. It just sounds so heavy, doesn't it? So formal, maybe even a little scary. But what if I told you it is so much simpler than we make it out to be?
The clue is right there in the word itself, accountability. See, to be accountable is simply to be able to provide an account of what's going on. So what does it mean to hold someone accountable? Well, it just means you have to ask for that account. It really just boils down to a simple dialogue. Hey, what happened? And this is what happened. That's it. It's just a conversation, not some big, scary disciplinary meeting.
So if it's really just a conversation, how do you structure it? Where do you even start? Well, this is where this incredibly powerful framework called the accountability dial comes into play. Just think of it like a tool, maybe a volume dial, with 5 different settings you can use to match how serious the situation is. And here's how it works. Level 1 is just the mention. That's a super quick, light check-in like, hey, noticed you were a few minutes late. Is everything okay? Level 2, the invitation, is a more informal, private chat to talk about a pattern you're seeing. Level 3, the conversation. That's the more serious, hey, we need to talk. Level 4 is the boundary, where you make the consequences crystal clear. And level 5, the limit. That's the final stop. Now this is absolutely crucial. This is not some rigid step-by-step process you have to follow every single time. For a tiny issue, a simple mention is probably all you need. But for something really serious, you might jump straight to the conversation or even the boundary. The point is, you are in complete control of the dial.
Okay, so having the framework is one thing, but actually using it effectively, that's the real skill. That's what separates a good manager from a truly great leader. And it all comes down to the quality of the conversations you have at each level of that dial. So often, the difference is just in your phrasing. A weak request like, please try and be on time, it's so passive. But a powerful open question like, what will you do to make sure you arrive on time? Wow, that does something incredible. It literally transfers ownership of the problem and the solution over to them. Now they have to think, they have to commit, they have to come up with their own plan.
Here's another key skill. Learning to tell the difference between an excuse and a reason. See, an excuse places all the blame externally. It was the traffic, the weather, something else. But a responsible reason, like in that second example, acknowledges their role in what happened. They took responsibility. Your job as a leader is to gently guide your team away from making excuses and toward giving reasons, turning every little failure into a chance to learn.
Okay, this next one. This is so hard for a lot of managers. When someone on your team brings you a problem, your first instinct is to fix it, right? To be the hero. You have to resist that urge. If you're always the one solving the problems, you're robbing your team of the chance to learn and grow. Instead, try this 2-step. Start with empathy. Wow, that sounds really tough. Then, hand the ownership right back with the most powerful question a leader can ask. So, what are you going to do about it?
And this whole idea of letting your team own their decisions, it's backed by some of the most successful leaders in the world. Jeff Bezos, for example, famously uses this phrase, disagree and commit. What that means is, even if you as the manager don't totally agree with how a team member wants to solve a problem, you commit to letting them try it their way.
And then you hold them accountable for the results.
And get this one. This is from Netflix CEO Reed Hastings. He says he prides himself on making as few decisions as possible. Why on earth would he do that? Because his job isn't to make all the decisions. His job is to build a team that can make great decisions without him. I mean, that is the ultimate goal of all of this, right? Fostering true ownership.
All right, so what happens when the conversations just aren't cutting it and performance still isn't improving? This is when you have to turn that dial up to the boundary. It's time to talk about consequences. And I don't mean as a threat, but as a necessary step to protect the needs of the business and the rest of the team.
The absolute key here is to understand the difference between a punitive consequence and a protective one. A punitive consequence is just about punishment. I mean, taking away the company trip doesn't actually solve the problem of someone being late. But a protective consequence, it directly addresses the business need. If being on time is an issue, then reducing remote work flexibility is a logical step to protect the team's need to collaborate. See the difference? It's not personal, it's protective.
You know, the word consequences makes most people jump straight to thinking about getting fired. But that's just the very end of a long, long spectrum. A consequence could be anything from reducing work from home flexibility, maybe switching up their roles and responsibilities, giving a formal warning, or even requiring some extra training. There are so many steps you can take to protect the team's needs before you ever have to get to that final limit.
So we've talked about the problem, we've gone through the framework, we've looked at the techniques, but none of this, absolutely none of it works without one key person deciding to actually make a change. And yeah, that person is you.
At the end of the day, as the leader, it is your job to hold your team accountable. I know it can feel uncomfortable sometimes, but it is absolutely essential for their growth, and yours. Building a real culture of ownership isn't a one-time thing you can check off a list. It's the sum total of all your consistent daily actions, giving that light touch feedback, asking those powerful open questions, and empowering your team to solve their own problems.
And that really brings us to the end. We've laid out the tools, we've talked through the mindset. The only question left is the one that matters most of all. Now, what are you going to do about it?